Good morning and welcome to this panel, one of the first of the two panels, the two parallel sessions of this conference. And we have four excellent papers here this morning that we're going to hear. And because of the extremely tight schedule that we're operating under, the speakers are earnestly requested to keep to their schedules. So we're going to start with Eric O'Neill, who's an artist blacksmith who's very well known to us all here. And he has created a great awareness in Limerick of the rich heritage of ironwork in Limerick City and its environs, and in particular in this context in Mount St. Lawrence Cemetery. So he's going to speak to us this morning about creating an awareness and appreciation of our ironwork.
Morning, everybody. My name is Eric O'Neill, and I'm an artist blacksmith, and I'm proud to say that. This, to me, is what it's all about: working the fire and working metal. And we're going to see our heritage ironwork. Do we look after it? What do we think of it? And how it has fared out to date. So this is a craftsman's perspective. This is what I see as a maker. What I can identify, what I can't identify. Be honest. There's no harm in saying, I don't know. What is the answer? We're all here to learn. An iron legacy worth saving. Here's one of the most ornate pieces of cast in the city. It's Mount St. Lawrence, which you'll be visiting tomorrow, and it's the Manchester Martyrs Memorial. Along with this big Celtic cross, we have the Maid of Iron, we have Celtic cross, we have Celtic interlace, and we can see it. It's all complemented by the ironwork that's around it. So this is a fantastic feature. And most ironwork is an integral part of its setting. If we take away the ironwork, we diminish the overall aesthetic. So every piece of iron is there for a reason. It isn't an afterthought, it isn't an add-on, it's part of the overall design. So if we lose this ironwork, we're diminishing what we have. First of all, we're going to look at the material. Here's cast iron. Quite simply, it's heated up, it's into a liquid form, then it's poured into a mould. Here's a cast iron plate in Mungret Cemetery. You can see the fantastic detail we can achieve with cast. Here's a cast iron cross. Harrison Lee and Sons, which were local to Limerick. You'll see hundreds of these practically in every cemetery in the locality. So once again, poured into a mould, and we achieved all this. Once again, cast iron surround, where all these panels are mechanically fixed together. And this one is unusual, where we have our cast iron posts at the four corners. So cast is pretty durable. It tries to look after itself, but it needs a bit of help once in a while. When it's in an elevated site like this, with all the vegetation cleaned and cleared back, it is a better chance of surviving. This is St. John's Church inside, Protestant church inside in St. John's Square. This is the detail we can achieve with cast. See the lichen growing it? I think this cross and plate is 1893. So you can see the detail we can achieve in it. The indentations, the scroll work on the end of the cross, the RIP, and this would be unique. There's only one of these. It's made for an individual, and it's cast for that individual. So if this is lost, it's unique, it's irreplaceable. Cast iron crypt door, it's made to look forged. See the rivets on the front? The name Boyd, St. Mary's Cathedral. It looks like a double door, but it's a single door. And once again, a cast iron product. Here's more detailed cast. You can see the two sides are still intact, and we've lost the front element. So we've diminished the setting here, and this is St. Munchin's church in Limerick. You can see how it's fixed into place, the ball feet which are leaded into the stone, and quite detailed scroll work on it. When we see scroll work in cast, it's usually quite substantial. 16, 20 mil material. It isn't as detailed as wrought iron. So this again is castings. And if we looked at the detail in this, we can see immediately there's two castings missing here, and these little ones in here. We've lost this whole piece. We can see the hole in the stone where it used to be. So this is me as a maker. I'm looking at my eyes. How did they assemble this? How did they put it together? What are the details? What's obviously missing to me? And it takes time to acquire this knowledge. Here once again is quite an unusual piece of cast. We can see the headstone marker. It's like a scroll of paper. All the detail on it. And this is St. Mary's Cathedral. And there's a real unusual feature in this brownish cast iron plinth that it's set upon. There's very few of these in Limerick. There's a number of them in St. Mary's. There's a couple of them in St. Munchin's. But other than that, you will not come across them. So they're unique once again. Here's the detail of cast, how ornate we can get it. This casting here would be poured all into one mould, so it's all uniform. There's no joinery, it's all poured into one section. Here's wrought iron. And wrought iron is the product of work. It took a lot of effort to produce it, and it takes a lot of effort to work it. So here's me behind the main element, which is fire, and working the fire. Usually when we go to a graveyard, and it's a historical graveyard, the first thing we meet is a wrought iron gate. This is vernacular in style. It's absolutely fantastic piece of craftsmanship. See the gussets, the handle, the amount of fullering and detail that's in it, all the joinery, riveting, traditional joinery. It's a fantastic piece of work. How many graveyards have we lost this, where a modern fabricated product is sitting in its place? We need to look after this, because once it's gone, it's gone. Here is Mount St. Lawrence. As soon as you go in the entrance, you'll see this big ornate forged cross. Many people refer to it as the Bethnal cross. Forged of a substantial nature. Just for me as a maker to look at the substance of this material, it's fantastic, and I'm in awe of the men that produced this. To see something set in mud and earth like this, sooner or later this element will fail, because this hasn't seen coat of paint for decades. Sooner or later this will fail. All we need to do is clear it apart, expose the plinth, and leave the material dry as quickly as possible. Sooner or later this will fail, and then the cross will topple over, and that will be the end of the cross. I've only seen 2 of these in Limerick, so we should preserve them and look after them. Here's a typical surround inside in the graveyard. Once again, the grass is overgrown. The bottom rail of this railing will be lost. It's only a matter of time. It's in moist, wet conditions. It has no chance to dry off, and we will lose it. And this is the work of a blacksmith. Quite an amount of effort, and we can see recycling here. This is a bevel surface. It's been recycled out of a cart wheel. We can see the swelling where he's punched the hole in the barrel. We can see the scroll work. We can see the fullering marks. We can see the tapering marks. Along with myself, there's 2 blacksmiths in the audience. They realise the amount of work and effort it took to make this. Here's another surround outside a mausoleum. Quite a fantastic piece of work. But yet again we can see deterioration. We can see where the 1.5 inch solid is practically being eaten away down here. Possibly vegetation or long grass has been sitting over this for years, and it's exposed the element, and it's just eating away at the ironwork. Castings up on top, leaded on, fantastic fantastic, substantial scroll work in all the corners. And the joinery on it, rivet, mortise and tenon. Carpentry joinery here, an overlap, 1.5 inch solid, remove some of the material and then have a flush plane. So just to see ironwork at this scale and how it's being produced is an education to me and everybody else that sees it, where you have to look for the detail. Here's casting, and it's been exposed. It's lost this little cover on the top. And this protruding piece of wrought iron, you can see the lead, how it was fixed on. And we can see all the blister marks on this paint. So somebody's just painted over wrought iron. And if you want to fast track the demise of iron, that's exactly what you do. Because the rust will carry on from underneath. All we're doing is helping it. So once again, we have to be aware how to care and how to look after the material. Here's Mount St. Lawrence. This is a little railing that's about 16 inches high. It's one of the most fantastic pieces of craft in Mount St. Lawrence. It's up beside the church. And once again, the ironwork complements what's behind it. There's a Celtic cross. It's quite ornate with organic forms. And we can see all these organic forms have been forged out of iron to complement the setting that it's in. And there's hundreds upon hundreds of hours work in this railing. Here's elements that are falling off that railing. And here's the ironwork next door. We've lost it. Here's the key. Small bit of lead remains. We don't know if there's iron down here. If there's iron down here and there's a pool of water on top of it, this will expand and expand to 11 times its diameter. And we can see this crack forming. So eventually we're going to not only lose our ironwork, but also lose this fantastic piece of limestone. And this whole end is just going to chip off. So it's about proper maintenance. It's about people being aware of what they're actually doing. Here's a Celtic cross in the graveyard near me. Most people will see this and have no regard to it. If you tried to make it, then you'd have regard for it. The scroll work, fire welding, riveting, the amount of technique in this little rusty cross is amazing. And it was a master blacksmith that made it. Here's the surround in St. Munstan's Church once again. When we look at it first hand, we say, sure, that's fantastic, it's in great shape, it's newly painted and everything's fine. Then we look at the detail. We've lost all the castings on this side. So we have protruding wrought iron, which is going to form a dish, which water will go in and break every one of these castings here. Just like this one's being removed, just like half of this one's being removed. Once water runs down the bar, it can get in there. It will get in there, frost will expand it, and we will lose it. We will lose it like that there. So maintaining this product, it takes effort and it takes regularity. 5 or 7 years, it should be cleaned down and painted, and it's practically indestructible. We will have this forever if it's maintained and maintained properly. Today's wrought iron. Wrought iron is no longer being produced, so it's a heritage product. Here's the guys that made it. And this is what we're recycling today. 3 and 4 inch chain. We're re-rolling it, re-rolling the material, and we're getting whatever diameter section we want for the conservation industry. So these are the guys that know what heat was all about. Locally produced. Here's Harrison Lee and Sons. 100 men working in a foundry, forge, a massive capability within the heart of Limerick. And most of their ironwork can be seen throughout the county. Once again, locally produced. John Fogarty. This is very rare, and of my walks of graveyards, this is the only example of his work I have found. Shannon Foundry, Limerick. So once again, locally produced. So it tells the story of not only the material, but it's all locally produced. So we still have a bond and a connection to these places. Capacity. Whether it's a one-man forge, two-man forge, three-man forge, whether the blacksmith worked on his own, what was his capacity? What could he produce? A single cross? Maybe we'll upscale it. Here's Harrison Lee. Here's the size of their foundry. And here's bigger again. Scottish import, Walter McFarlane and Sons. Is iron unbreakable? No, it's not. We can see here. Here's the remnants of ironwork that's been left. Now here's a case study, and quite quickly I'll go through this. Here's a cross. Now we're going to look at the making of it. This man invited me into his forge. It's been 48 years since a fire has been lit in it. It was the Barrington's forge in Maru. Here's me working the material, forging the material, forming the element. We're publicly demonstrating these skills, and you can see the fascination by the crowd. Here's a fellow blacksmith, Stephen Quinn. He's tapering one end. JJ Bone, he's making another end. It's tradition. It's about passing skill from one person to the next person. Here's the grandson of the blacksmith who never had the opportunity of work the fire. So he worked the fire with us that day, and he was quite capable. And he was delighted to be involved in this project. So here's me forging the ring, the element, punching the ring, assembling the piece, and finally the piece is starting to come together. And we put a modern little twist on it, a little wrap in the center. And here's the finished piece. Now here's my last slide. We have over 3,600 historical graveyards in the country, with an average figure of between 4 to 30% of the graves having an iron marker, or which are adorned by an iron feature. It's a fantastic opportunity for us as a society to restore and authentically conserve such ironwork. This will not only ensure the future of this historical and in most cases locally produced cultural fabric, but it will also ensure the current and future traditional skill set of smiths countrywide. By hammer and hand do all crafts stand. So.